Friday, the 30th day of March. I apologize, we've had some technical difficulty this morning. Massive rainstorms going on in this area for most of the past week, which frequently causes issues with electronic equipment. Okay, the prepper tip of the day, we're going to expand on this a little bit. The prepper tip of the day is to inventory all your batteries, no matter what kind of batteries they are. They could be batteries for your car, your truck, your ham radio equipment, flashlights, whatever they might be, radios. Make sure that they're in good condition. Make sure that they're properly charged. If you have a choice, you want the nickel metal hydride for the rechargeables. Be sure you've got at least 2 chargers, at least 1 solar charger, and last but not least, if you're putting any equipment in storage, especially any equipment that takes AA's, AAA's, C's, D's, make sure those batteries are removed from the device before you put them in storage. Failure to do so could lead to drastic consequences. We have a patient waiting in the green room, my friend Tom Berryhill. We're going to be talking about emergency survival communications and ham radio equipment and related items. If you've got a question or comment about communications, give us a call at 800-313-9443. Good morning, Tom.
Hi, John. Good morning. How are you today?
Well, pretty good, except my internet connection is down and struggling here to do the show on the telephone, so using Skype like I normally do.
Sounds really good.
Yeah, it's a landline, and a landline is always preferable to a cell phone. So, Tom, you heard the introduction. You heard me talking about batteries and power supplies. You can't live in St. Louis without knowing people that work for Boeing, right?
Oh, yeah, Boeing, that's true. Yeah, everybody works there, it seems like.
Yeah, and I've known probably 30 or 40 people that have worked there off and on over the years. But if one of my engineer friends has an issue with an F-15, I say to him kind of jokingly, check the ground. Make sure it's got a proper ground, which oddly enough turns out to be the correct solution a certain percentage of the time. But a lot of the times, issues with electronic equipment is a simplistic, has a simplistic, quick answer, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does, John. Sometimes it's just a loose wire. The original installation wasn't done correctly. The wires weren't clamped down tight enough. Corrosion on battery terminals, things like that, and they can cause quite a bit of trouble. And there's some real easy ways to see if you have a good battery connection, especially on higher power circuits like a car battery, or if you have some large batteries that are powering your ham radio communication system. There's some easy ways to check for that. We can talk about that if you'd like.
Absolutely. Well, let's do that. How do you check these bad connections?
Well, I found one of the simplest ways is to get even an inexpensive digital voltmeter. You do want a digital meter. That will work the best in this case. And you put it on the lowest scale, which would be millivolts, and you would take one probe and touch it right to the battery terminal itself, not the connection that you made to it, but the battery, the lug or a post or terminal that comes out of the battery itself. Touch one probe on there. It doesn't matter which polarity. It's not real critical. You're looking for a number. You take the other probe, and you simply put that on the lug that you bolted to or connected to that battery post. So you're basically measuring a voltage drop across the connection that you made to the battery. The lower the number, the better connection you have. Now you have to do this under load. Say you're transmitting. When you're transmitting with a higher power ham radio, you might be drawing 20 amps out of that battery. There will be a slight voltage drop across that connection. The lower that number, the better. And that's how I've always tested them.
Okay.
And this will work on all types of electrical circuits. In fact, that's what causes the heat, John, in any kind of circuit like that. If you have a connection that's heating up, it's because there's some resistance there. There's not a very good connection that acts like a resistor, and the voltage drop across there with the current flowing causes the heat to build up. You can also use one of those infrared thermometer little thermal guns to measure the heat generated. So you can look at the ambient temperature of maybe the electrical box itself, or the battery, or the surrounding area, and then put the little. Most of those have a like a red laser pointer. You put that right on that connection and see if it's heating up at all. That's another method.
Goes the telephone. Well, that sounds like a simple way to do it and an effective way to do it. And these digital, I've got a couple of these digital voltmeters, and entry level now is pretty inexpensive, like $8 or $10, aren't they?
Oh yeah, and sometimes they give them away. You can go to Harbor Freight. I know if during certain sales and promotions, they'll actually give those real cheap ones away. I bought a bunch of them once and just gave them away as gifts to friends and business associates to keep in their car. I've always thought it was a good idea to keep a digital voltmeter in your car. If you have a problem while you're out on the road, or you're working on some radios, or you're installing a radio in the car and you need to check certain circuits, it's really handy to have the digital voltmeter. And you don't need a real good one. You just need something that will read the 12-volt circuits in the car and the battery and ignition circuits that you want to connect to. So it's real handy to have those voltmeters. And they're inexpensive. I think the small ones are around $5 or so. Very, very inexpensive. Well, they're not the best, but they work pretty good.
As I said in my book that I wrote back in the mid-1980s, the reason cars don't start now is basically the same as they didn't start in 1944. Either a bad battery, or a bad battery connection, or a bad connection to the starter motor. One of those three things, right?
Oh, yeah, and it was even worse in the old days early on when the battery circuits were all 6 volts. They drew a tremendous amount of current. And it's that current, again, with a improper connection to the battery, or maybe the starting relay or whatever, that incorrect or insufficient connection that's building up some resistance. The more the current that goes through there, the worse it's going to be. And it heats up more, and then it just makes the connection worsen till it finally fails. I think the best thing they ever did was go to 12 volts, and there's even talk, and it may already be happening, John. They're talking about like 42-volt circuits in cars. I don't think they'll ever go over 50 volts. I think is the limit for. In the electrical world, that'd be like Class 2 wiring in a building is all low voltage till you get over 50 volts.
Right.
Now,
I wasn't aware of a discussion to increase the voltage on everyday cars.
I've read some articles where they've talked about increasing automotive systems. I believe it was 42 volts. There was some talk about that. Now, in the old days, I don't know if they still do this on trains, but I remember buying some surplus Motorola radios, and they were Motorola Motrax, and they came from the railroad industry, and they operated those radios. They were the same ones that they put in police cars. They looked the same. Everything was the same, except they operated on 72 volts. Some of them were 12 volts and 72 volts, but you could buy the 72-volt version very inexpensively because nobody had a locomotive they were going to install it in, and they wanted to put it in a car, and it wouldn't work because it needed 72 volts. And then people would modify those. These ham guys would modify those things to get them back to 12 volts. It was a lot of work, but it was worth it because you could pick these things up for peanuts. And I had one myself. It's been so long I can't remember what we had to do, change a transformer and some of the switching circuits. So, but other than that,
it'd be easier to change the external power source to convert from 12 to 72.
Well, John, this was almost 50 years ago, and it was doing this type of stuff back then was more difficult. Today, it's real easy to do those types of things. The solid-state components are available, but boy, it was a major task back in the day. And all we would do is get the Motorola parts that had to be changed out to convert that radio back to 12 volts. We did a lot of those types. We did all kinds of stuff like that.
A friend of mine, he's multi-talented. He's a jazz musician, a diesel mechanic, and he volunteered at the St. Louis Transportation Museum to work on steam locomotives because he was just fascinated by them and wanted to really get firsthand experience on working on steam locomotives. So he volunteered to do that and gain some experience.
Yeah, that's an interesting museum. I've been there a couple of times, yes.
Well, I have my favorite airplane there, DC-3, which was the first. I didn't call it Air Force One, but that's what it's the role it served for Harry Truman, a DC-3 that Harry Truman flew around in. And I don't know if it's airworthy or not, but they do have it out there.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
It is. The call number is 800-313-9443. Power supplies for radios have, because the power required is not nearly as dramatic as it used to be in years gone by with the vacuum tubes. So the power supplies themselves can be much smaller and lighter to accomplish the same goal, can't they?
Yes, that's true. Now, I'll make a few comments on the types of power supplies. We have switching power supplies. They're the most compact. They're very small for the power that they put out. And then you have what's called a linear power supply, and that will usually have a large heat sink on there that has what's called a pass transistor that has to regulate that voltage and present that voltage to the output terminals, which will generate quite a bit of heat. And in some situations, you want the linear power supply, and others the switching will work. The reason for that, John, is if you're operating an HF radio and you have a switching power supply, just the switching action internal to that power supply generates a tremendous amount of RF interference. As a matter of fact, if you are operating some ham radio equipment, especially on the shortwave or HF bands, or if you have a shortwave radio, for that matter, and you're having trouble picking up stations in your house, you hear a lot of hash noise and static. I mean, sometimes really loud, staticky signals with no modulation, no talking or anything. That most likely is from a switching power supply in your house. You can operate any of these radios on internal batteries like D-cell batteries or just a car battery or something temporarily. Turn off the main circuit breaker to the building. You'd be amazed at how much noise goes away. So switching power supplies are the piece of equipment that's most likely causing that. It can also be some of these newer LED lamps because they all have a switching power supply that regulates the 120 volts down to the lower voltage that those LEDs need. So they generate quite a bit of noise.
Is there a filter? Is there a filter a person could put to plug in?
Yes, you can. Now, John, some of these LED bulbs, they'll say right on the package that they have very low RFI, which stands for radio frequency interference. But I have a little unit that I can monitor, and with a directional antenna, you can go around an area and you can track down noise signals. I've actually used that instrument to find bad insulators on top of the transformer sitting 20 feet off the ground on a power pole. And you could actually track it down to that transformer, and it was a dirty insulator that had a crack in it, and the crack picked up a lot of dirt. Every time it rained, it caused a path through that crack that had a high resistance, but enough leakage through there, and it almost had like a corona, like a discharge. That was on a 7,200 volt line that fed the neighborhood. And there'd be arcing action. You couldn't really see it, even at night. You couldn't see it, but it was there. And I could use that directional antenna and that instrument to find that noise source. In your house, you could do the same thing, but it's much easier to just start unplugging things. Maybe unplug every type of electronic device, television sets, everything, and then have turn your radio on, your shortwave radio on very loud, and then go through the house and start plugging things back in. And you'll find the instrument yeah, that's right. You'll find it. Linear power supplies won't do that. They won't really make any noise. They're filtered, but they also don't operate as a switch that will cause that type of interference. and they work a lot better. Now, I mentioned those older radios that were used on trains and things. The older Motorola and General Electric radios were pretty popular with the ham operators back in the old days. And they're all scrapped now. All that stuff's gone to the dump. Nobody wants it. But if anybody out there, any hams out there, are looking for a really good power supply, look for a General Electric Master 2 base station of any band. It doesn't matter if it's low band, high band, or UHF. That power supply in a General Electric Master 2 base, or even a Master 3, but the Master 2 is the one I'm most familiar with. That is one of the best power supplies ever made, and you can also tie a battery into it for battery backup.
Hold that thought, Tom. Hold that thought. We have a break. To call number is 800-313-9443.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman.com.
Survival Communications. You got a question or comment about emergency survival communications? Give us a call at 800-313-9443. Well, Tom, before the break, you were talking about your favorite power supply, weren't you?
Yes, and that, again, is the General Electric Master 2. And they spell it a little different. It's M-A-S-T-R. There's no E in there, and then the Roman numeral 2. You can find these on eBay. But I picked up a whole pickup truck load of the base stations. They were actually repeaters, UHF repeaters with duplexers, the cabinets, everything. $25 for the. I think I have six or seven of them, and they all had that power supply in there. And the power supplies in the duplexers are probably worth more than all the rest of it. I kept all of them and may put one of them on the air one of these days, but. Those power supplies really, really work good. And they have terminals on there where you can actually connect a 12-volt battery. So if you have a battery bank you want to power your station, the power supply will generate the required 12 volts to run the radio equipment, but will also charge a battery. And in the event there's a power outage on the utility power, it will immediately switch over to the battery bank, and your radio equipment will continue to run uninterrupted until the batteries wear out or the power comes back on and starts charging them again. But for the most part, power outages aren't long enough to cause too much of a problem. And it works really, really good, John.
Well, Tyler, I'm going to give you a homework assignment.
Okay.
And it's something it just occurred to me. I'm going to encourage you to please consider this building a tempest secure room to keep whatever you think would be an appropriate amount of electronic communications equipment, so that in the event of a EMP or coronal mass ejection, there would be a stock and inventory of equipment that would be undamaged by either EMP attack or coronal mass ejection, ready to be used by the sheriff's department, the paramedics, the fire department, and so forth. That could save a lot of lives.
Oh, yeah, I already have some of that type of equipment stored away. And, John, the cabinets these commercial units are built in are all metal, and they're grounded right now where I have them stored. So they're locked up and secure and protected already as we speak without really doing... Oh, yeah, they're in a metal building, and they're in a metal cabinet within the metal building, and then those cabinets are grounded. So they're already protected. You know, the big problem, though, with that type of equipment, that it was all... it wasn't frequency agile. You couldn't just dial in a channel. That's the main problem. If you wanted to help a sheriff's department, you almost have to set those up in advance. And unfortunately, the equipment I have is all UHF. Those repeaters were all on the 450 megahertz band. And out here in these rural areas where we're located, they all use VHF. So they're on the 150 megahertz band, so it won't do them much good. But there were versions. There were versions of those base stations for every land mobile frequency band that was available. So they're all very similar.
If all their equipment is dead, they won't be on anything. So whatever available is
that's very true. But you'd have more than the just the radio equipment. You'd have to climb towers and change the entire antenna array. Everything would have to be changed. All the units in their cars, everything the entire system would have to be changed. So it would be a mess. I will tell you that. It would be a huge mess if something like that ever happens.
Well, the burden of doing that work, which would be a lot, compared to not being able to talk at all, is basically what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if work commenced immediately and everybody worked around the clock, I think you could maybe and had enough help to do it, you could probably get the thing changed in a few days, maybe a week at the most, and that's assuming equipment was available. The antennas would be difficult because you'd have to get the antenna arrays down from the towers, and in the event that they had VHF equipment, you could trim the antenna elements down so they'll be smaller for the UHF frequencies. And, of course, the coverage is different. They use VHF for a reason in these rural areas because they have to cover down in the valleys, and the UHF doesn't do as good a job when you get into a mountainous area. It just doesn't work as well. And, you know, John, these hills and valleys where we live out here, it's difficult to do with even a VHF. So the county I'm in, they have a repeater system at the north end of the county and another one on the south end just to cover the whole county. So it's difficult. It really is. And even with two systems, there's still dead spots. And many times I know the police revert to using cell phone. They'll just go to a cell phone if they can't get through. And sometimes the cell phones work better. But it's not the most reliable way to communicate for law enforcement. They really do need a two-way system and not a cell phone.
Right. Well, in an emergency, you do what you got to do, and that's right. The ability to have some backup, regardless of the difficulties for setting it up, it would be a project, but it would be necessary, and it would literally be a matter of life and death to have some kind of communications.
Yeah, these commercial, John, these commercial base stations, they all look the same no matter what frequency band they're on, and you have to know the model numbers and the numbering scheme for that manufacturer to figure out what frequency they're on. That tells you what band they operate on. But there is so much of that equipment available now. Most of it went to the dump when they changed everything to narrowband from January of 13 on. Everything had to be narrowband. So that's what put a lot of this stuff in the dump, and that's how I ended up getting these repeaters. Now, for ham radio use, they're perfect because we don't have those restrictions. We can make signals as wide as we want as long as they stay within the band. You can't get outside the band edges, but you can use the older wideband equipment. As a matter of fact, the older equipment actually sounds better. These new narrowband things, they do not sound as good as the older systems. And I'm even talking the real old ones that were very wideband. I mean, they sounded about as good as an FM radio station.
Right. Well, there's something to be said for clarity and volume and all those things, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Yes. But I'm just encouraging any of the ham operators listening to look for that type of equipment and grab it before it ends up in the dump. You can usually get it for next to nothing, and hang on to it, maybe test it out, see if it's still working, and set it aside for future use, or convert it into the ham radio band, which is very simple to do, and get it tuned up, put it into service, either as a simplex base station. And so most of these are relatively high power, usually around 100 watts, and you can set those up and really have some good coverage with even a modest antenna system. You'd be surprised how far it will go. And then the mobile units, the same thing. I mean, some of those that were worth many, many hundreds of dollars even 10 years ago, nobody wants it anymore. I mean, those same radios now, John, maybe $10 to $25 for a really nice unit that cost maybe a couple of $1,000s when it was new.
Yep, that's what I've seen. And Motorola is the Cadillac of commercial radios, isn't it?
Yes, and the best part about it is there's service manuals available for that equipment. So you have all the schematics, all the information that it takes to maintain it, which is sometimes difficult to do on some of these newer ham units that are synthesized. Although I prefer the regular ham units that you can buy. They're inexpensive. They work great. Personally, I would use a dual band mobile unit. You can use those in the car or set one up as a base station or some pretty wide area coverage on VHF and UHF. And it works out quite well. But if you ever have to repair those things, because of the software involved and all that, unless it's a transistor, and many times it's nothing more than an output transistor for the power amplifier. They can be replaced if you have the skills to work on that. But the Motorola and General Electric and even the RCA equipment, which goes way back, some of that RCA equipment was some pretty good stuff and worked quite well. Those were the three names, the big names in the land mobile industry. Right. And then with Motorola and General Electric being the top dogs, in that arena. So, but all of that stuff, most of it's gone by the wayside. Motorola, I think most of their equipment's coming out of China now. It's everything's changed. But the service manuals are always available for their equipment, so it makes it really relatively easy.
There's a whole subculture of men who specialize in this older Motorola equipment in terms of determining what equipment can be used for what purpose, how to maintain it, how to program them, how to repair them. Right.
Yes, John, there's even a website, Repeater Builder, and if anybody's interested, go to that website, and there's always a discussion going on, and there's just page after page after page of technical information on these types of systems we're talking about right now. And a lot of these guys that post that information, photographs, everything, they talk about this equipment all the time, and they share their information on how they modified it to use it in the ham radio bands. And you can learn a lot about the older equipment that's still viable today for ham radio use. Now, in the commercial world, they can't use it because of the narrowband laws, but that does not affect the ham radio operators. So what happened when all that equipment was pulled out of service, a lot of it got exported to third world countries, a lot of it went to the dump, and a lot of it ended up in the hands of ham radio operators. So there could have been multi-$1,000 pieces of equipment that was just handed off in many cases for free. Just get it out of here. We want it gone.
Right, and they're sold for scrap. Oh, Tom,
That's
we
right.
missed our bottom of the hour break, so I'm going to kind of ad-lib a bottom of the hour break here. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. A lot of interesting things there, the way you will get informed, educated, entertained, possibly even get upset by watching some of these videos, reading some of my articles. And, of course, also at my website, you'll find energy cleaners for sale. We have an Easter sale going from now until midnight Monday evening. Easter sale on energy cleaners, $50 off energy cleaners, 10% off mattress pads. If you want to participate, just place your order. You can place your order at my website at thelibertyman.com. Or you can call my toll-free number and place your order. You'll be paying the full price when you place your order, and I refund the difference. That's how this works. My toll-free order line, 24 hours a day, here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. So get your energy cleaner, $50 off. Mattress pads, 10% off from now until midnight Monday. And don't forget, I have a 90-day money-back guarantee, so you're risking nothing when you get your energy cleaner. Your orders are already starting to come in from my announcement yesterday on the sale, and the sale goes until midnight Monday. If you need to mail a letter with a money order, be sure to have it postmarked before midnight Monday to participate in the sale. And that's our bottom of the hour break. Okay, let's continue, Tom.
Okay, well, I forgot where we left off. Talking about the older
we're talking
equipment.
about, I'm going to expand on what you said a little bit. My friend Joe, you know who Joe is, he makes a living going to mostly industrial auctions. He specializes primarily in medical equipment, which he buys for 5 cents on the dollar, and he sells it on eBay for about 50 cents on the dollar. But since he's a ham radio operator, he has taken the time to bid on and acquire, probably between 200 and 300 radios over the years. Motorola mobile units that came out of Missouri Highway Patrol cars, Motorola units that were used in also fire departments and paramedics, handy talkies from police departments and fire departments as well. It's a fairly large inventory of radios that, when they were new, cost one Motorola unit from a highway patrol car would be, what would you say, about $2,000, Tom?
I'd say somewhere around there. They were quite expensive. I'm even talking back in the 1970s, John. I bet you those things were $1,500 a piece.
Right.
And that was a lot of money back then.
Just to look at, you may not even recognize it being a radio. These units, there's no on-off switch. There's no gauges, no dials. Everything's done by hooking up the unit in the trunk of the Crown Vic police cruiser with the antenna coax being attached to it, the power supply, and the control wires all being connected into it. Everything has to be set up with a computer to program these things. You got to know what you're doing. And then the part that you use to talk with would be in the passenger compartment, attached to the dashboard somehow, with the control mechanism to control the frequency, the channel, the volume, the squelch, and all those things, and of course the microphone. And these units can also be converted to become a repeater, can't they, Tom?
Well, some of them can, not all of them, but
right.
In many cases you can take two of those mobile units and put them in a cabinet, hook it up with a 12-volt power supply or a large battery bank, and set that up with an RF network called a duplexer, and that allows you to transmit and receive at the same time on the same antenna without the transmitter energy getting back into the receiver and blowing it out. So you operate on two separate frequencies, but the antenna circuits are tied together through this RF network known as a duplexer, and it isolates the receiver and transmitter circuits so they can use the same antenna simultaneously. You can't do that with two separate units. And there were some Motorola repeaters made where they actually used two of their lower powered radios, and they just used the transmitter circuit out of one and the receiver circuit out of the other, but put them all in one container with that duplexer unit, and that made it into a low-power repeater. And these were typically used on large construction sites. If they're, say, building a new hospital or an auditorium or, something large where they really needed some extra range, they would set that thing up in a high location. It might only be a 10-watt repeater, but it would cover the entire construction site. And that worked quite well. Those things show up in a used market. If you want one already set up like that, they can be purchased. I've seen those things go for $100. So still usable for hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to Tom and I and you're scratching your head, duplex or what are these guys talking about? Here's your heads up. You don't need to know what Tom and I know. What you need to do is join a ham radio club, work on getting your ham radio license. At the same time, once you join a ham radio club, you'll be tapped into a base of knowledge that includes what Tom knows, what I know, which is limited, and be able to accomplish your goal of having effective emergency communications during a crisis. So you may be sitting there in Florida or Maine or California, wherever you might be, Montana, thinking, what in the hell are these guys talking about? Well, you don't need to know what we're talking about. What you need to do is start working on a ham radio license, join a local ham radio club, and then you can gain knowledge from the people who've been doing this for 30 or 40 or 50 years. Right, Tom?
That's right. That's really the best way to go. And as far as emergency communications goes, John, I really feel that repeaters are unnecessary, and it is a much simpler system can be set up with what's called simplex radios, where you pick a specific frequency or channel, and all operations take place on that one channel or frequency. There's no repeater. There's no infrastructure that needs to be maintained. The base station that you're talking from, the mobile unit, the portable HT that the people in the field are using, that's the entire system. There is no repeater on a tall building or tower somewhere that has to be maintained, or you have to worry about it being hit by lightning, anything like that. So it's much simpler. It's very effective and will get the job done. And usually with an emergency situation, you're working in a smaller geographical area, so you don't need really wide area coverage, which a repeater would allow. But in most cases, for emergency use, just simplex systems are fine. The only exception to that would be mobile repeaters, where you would have a very small, maybe a 1-watt repeater in the vehicle. You'd have a high-power mobile unit that could connect to the base station that could be 10 or 15 miles away, and that would be a very reliable connection. But your little handheld radio, the HT, will not cover that distance. So you have a repeater in the car, and it takes the transmission, the reception and transmission between the main base station and the car, and extends it out to your handheld radio. So that effectively puts a high-powered mobile unit in the palm of your hand, so you can connect all the way back to the main base station very reliably with that small, low-powered radio that's hand-carried. That is one piece of equipment I think is very desirable, but a little bit complicated to set up. But it can be done, and a lot of ham operators have done that, and that's what the police departments use. That's why you see so many antennas on these police cars. They have one for the data equipment, the computers. They have one for the main two-way radio system. They'll have another one for the mobile repeater that connects to their handheld HT radio. So that's you'll see at least 2 or 3 antennas on these police cars because of all that equipment.
Right. Well, I've got 3 antennas on the back of my car, as you know, and it's not optional. If you want to accomplish certain goals, you need certain pieces of equipment, including antennas, and it's all part of the learning process, learning what works, what doesn't work. But Tom, I'm always running into people who use and have what we jokingly in the ham community call blister pack radios. These are the blister pack refers to the packaging that would be on the shelf at Walmart or some other big box store. Typically, there'd be a name brand like Motorola, for example, and the The little handheld units, they take typically a couple of AA's or AAA batteries, and they'll say on the package that you can talk 15 or 20 or 30 miles with these little units using the FMRS. What's the other one? FRS, I think is the other one.
Yeah, FRS and GMRS.
GMRS, right? GMRS. And those of us in the ham community, we make fun of those radios, don't we, Tom?
Well, they meet a need. There is a need for those. And let's just say your family is having a gathering, or you're at a fair or a carnival, or you're going to a large event. You have to stay in touch. They're great for that because they will cover a large auditorium or a small geographical area. No problems with that. But if you want to talk longer distances, those radios are just not equipped for that. They're typically maybe 1/2 watt, maybe 1 watt at the most. I think they're only a 1/2 watt on the FRS, which is Family Radio Service, and that's what they're intended to be used for. And then the GMRS can have higher powers. I believe they can operate up to 50 watts for a base station or a repeater. You can actually set up your own repeater if you wanted to. It does have to be licensed. It does require an FCC license. And there's many groups that have set these up. If they're having a neighborhood watch system or a program, they'll use GMRS radios. They work pretty good, but doesn't prevent anybody from easily getting on your frequency. Now,
there's no privacy at all. They're totally open, unsecured communications, and
yes,
that's the trade-off there. If you go with the GMRS, granted you can have more power. In a remote area where I am, that would not be a bad choice at all because you're not going to have hundreds of possible people listening to your transmissions. But in a urban and suburban area, it's going to be completely open and no security, no privacy at all, right, Tom?
Yes, that's correct. And many times people with similar radios will hear you on there, and they will attempt to use that repeater for their own use, or they will try to talk to you and your crew that's using it, or just cause malicious interference because they want to. So, yeah, the GMRS is usable, but I wouldn't suggest using it. Then there's the other radios, the Chinese radios that a lot of the ham operators buy when they first get started because they're inexpensive, $30 or so, and they cover all the frequencies. You just dial in anything you want. They, what I don't like about them is I think they're too complicated. They do work, and they work okay, but not the best, but they do work. But they're rather complex to program and get set up, and it discourages a lot of new ham operators. They get discouraged before they ever really got started. And then everybody is so used to picking up a cell phone, and it just works everywhere you are. But what they're not taking into consideration is the extensive infrastructure that's in place, towers everywhere, all types of equipment, connecting all of this together and into the landline system and so on, microwave systems that connect the cell towers to each other. It's quite a infrastructure that had to be set up for that system. Now, these little radios are similar in operation to a cell phone, but they don't have that infrastructure behind them. So you're talking from one little walkie-talkie to a base station that could be 10, 15, 20, 25 miles away. You're going to have a lot of trouble unless you're in a very high location. And some of those are even 5 watts of power, but that's not quite enough with that small antenna to span that distance. So many new ham operators just assume that little handheld unit will be all they need, and they get discouraged before they ever really got started. And it's amazing how many hams did get their start that way, John, and they got so frustrated with it they just gave up and quit the hobby. Yeah, it's just they just went on to something else.
They do, and that's unfortunate. Here's our break. Call number is 800-313-9443. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday the 30th of March, visiting with Tom Berryhill. Well, Tom, we've covered a lot of ground here, and talking about things that some people will know about, talking about things that people don't have a clue what we're talking about, and, of course, some people in between. But the bottom line is you don't need to know what Tom Berryhill knows. What you do need to do is find your local ham radio club, find out when they meet, start going to those meetings, start training and learning and studying for your ham radio license, get that ham radio license, and go on from there and continue to network with and understand the people who have the depth of knowledge going back decades that know how to accomplish these goals in the most cost-effective, most efficient way. Right, Tom?
Yes, that's correct. That's an ideal suggestion, a great idea, John. And everybody should try that if they have any interest. Find that local ham club, and there will be people there very willing to help you to gain the knowledge needed to first get your ham radio license, take the test, get the license. Many of the clubs have volunteer examiners that will administer those test sessions, and you can take your test right there at the club meeting place, and you'll be issued a license in just a few days. And so I think it takes less than a week nowadays to get that license. So
right.
It's not, and it's easy. It's not too hard if you study for a few weeks. I think you would have the necessary knowledge to pass that test. It's multiple choice. It's simple to get for the entry level, and then you can learn as you go and increase your knowledge and get the higher class licenses to operate on all the bands, all the HF bands that would give you worldwide communications. So you start out with the technician license, which is for use for local use in your general local area, and then you can advance from there. I've always considered an apprenticeship. The first license puts you in an apprenticeship program where you can learn as you go, and you'll meet a lot of new friends, and you'll find it very interesting to meet people from all walks of life that have similar interests with the ham radio. That's the common connection between all of us. You never know if you're going to be talking to a neurosurgeon one day and a guy that runs a backhoe the next day and a dentist, an attorney. You just never know who you're going to be talking to, John. It's pretty interesting.
That's right. You certainly have. Yes, you never know. You never know.
And then when you go to the ham club, you'll learn some valuable skills, how to put these antenna connectors on. I think that's something that everybody needs to learn when they get into ham radio. That's one of the first things you should learn is how to attach these antenna connectors to antenna cable. And soldering skills you can learn. If you don't know how to solder, you can brush up on your soldering skills. That's real handy if you have to fix anything or connect wires and antenna cables and things like that. It's really good to know how to solder. Learn those skills, and there'll be some specialty type tools that may be required. You'll see what those tools are, and you may want to acquire some of your own.
Tom, thank you for being with us. Appreciate it, sir. I'll be back next week.
Thank you, John.
Okay, that's it for this hour. We'll be back next hour with Dr. Phil Myers, we hope, unless he's taken off an Easter vacation. Stay tuned. Gentlemen, J.R. Moore here on Friday the 30th of March. Our prepper tip of the day is to inventory your batteries. Make sure they're all in good condition. Make sure you got plenty of them. Make sure you got at least not one, but two chargers, at least one being a solar charger. And last but not least, when you store your equipment, make sure the batteries are removed. It will save you a lot of grief and worry in the future. We have patiently in the green room, my friend Dr. Phil Myers. Dr. Phil Myers, D.C., is a chiropractic physician living and working in my hometown, St. Louis, Missouri. If you want to get started with Dr. Myers, here's what you do. Call his office. Set up that first private, no-charge consultation. That telephone number at the office is area code 314-878-6868. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, John. How are you doing today?
No complaints. Looking forward to a early spring day. We're having some sunshine here for the first time in about a week. How about yourself, sir?
Oh, I know. I'm looking forward to it. It was so funny. I didn't even go outside to check out what the weather was. I just bundled myself up, and I got outside. I'm like, I think I overdressed.
Overdressed in terms of warmth, or in stuff?
Yeah, I put too many layers on. I'm like, It's not that cold outside.
Right. Well, that's the advantage of layering, is you can add or remove layers as necessary, right?
Oh, I know. My mom always had a saying. She's like, hungry, eat. You're cold, put on a sweater.
Uh-huh. Well, my sergeant in basic training said, young trooper, when you're in the Army, make sure you never get cold, never get wet, never get hungry. And if you can do those three things, you'll be okay.
Exactly. I like it.
Absolutely. Well, Doctor, I apologize. Last week we had an unfortunate technical issue. We didn't have a live show, but everybody looks forward to the health tip of the week. And what would that be this week, sir?
Well, let's build a context for today, and let me talk about a little bit of what I do. And so, for a lot of the listeners that are clicking in this year. And I've changed a little bit of stuff up along with my own growth and development within this past year and the things that I'm changing for myself. And basically, I focus on three things. I focus on your physical health. I focus on your emotional, mental, neurological health. They kind of come together. And I focus on your biochemical health. And so when I take a person through a new patient examination or any follow-ups according to our curriculum for you, we're always addressing those. Because when you're dealing with the physical body, it's really always about mastering the strength of that person, their flexibility, their balance, how well you move, the tone of your muscles, how well is your endurance and your agility. As we succumb to any type of long sustaining stress over time, which we don't even notice, and kind of goes underneath the radar for most of the point, because it's not emotional, quote unquote, emotional mental stress. It's these physical stresses of the body doing the same thing over and over again. It's the repetitive, piecemeal type of work that we're doing. It's the lack of getting up out of your chair over a period of day where you're sitting in your chair for 8 to 9 hours and getting up once during lunch. And maybe some people don't even do that. They just pull their lunch out of their cupboard and then just sit down and then continue on with the rest of their day. And then at the end of the day, they leave, go back in their car, sit down again, drive the 25 to 35-minute commute home, get home. Then by the time you're home for maybe a couple, 2-3 hours, I bet you half of that time is at least sitting, and then you're back in bed. And then you wake up the next day and do the same thing over again, hoping the weekend will have a little bit more adventure.
Right.
So when you're looking at a person's physicality, you got to look at the way you live your life, the way you move. And so when I work with somebody, I test those out. I challenge those in your body. It doesn't matter what a person is coming in for, whether it be a pain that's in their spine or their body in any place, whether it's a disease named in the gut or in an organ or systemically in the blood, or if they're really struggling with their mental and emotional belief structures, and which leads to more like depression, anxiety, fear, and worry, and stuff like that. When it doesn't matter what a person comes in with, that physical aspect, that getting the physicality of the body back in play is so important, because we know without a shadow of a doubt that the mind can overpower the body and the body can overpower the mind. And it is our responsibility as a human being, it's our divine birthright as a human being to master this physical body and get it to do some amazing things that literally will take you out of the current situation that you're in, mentally, emotionally, biochemically, and obviously physically. If you're then doing physical work, you're going to see the physical changes when you do the physical work. So I challenge everybody on those things. I use a device called a power plate. It is a anti-gravity device or a gravity device, depending on how you look at it. It's sine wave technology. So a sine wave, we've all seen the sine wave. And so that wave has a vibration, a frequency, and a tone. And so what we've done is the scientists have put that frequency into a computerized machine that vibrates at that frequency. We can make it go really, really fast. We can make it go really, really slow. We can control the intervals between waves themselves. And when you do that, you change the amount of gravity or anti-gravity effects on the human body. So I can make things, so I can take a person that can barely do a push-up. I can put them on the machine and they'll pump out 5 push-ups. Right. Is because when you're on the machine, we're sometimes focusing on the anti-gravity effect, so it makes all your muscles contract and relax really, really fast. It helps lubricate the ligaments, the joints. It helps bring blood circulation to the entire body, decreases the inflammatory markers that are going on in the system, because when you put a person in a sine wave environment, it's anti-inflammatory. And so then I can take a person that, I want to really help build up their quads. So I'll have them stand on it and do some squats or even do a static hold. And while they're holding it, breathing, contracting, and working on their balance and flexibility and agility, the machine is pulling them down onto the plate and making their muscles work while they're holding that position. So we can then see endurance. We can see balance. I can see muscle tone. I can see where their body collapses, so their spine, they'll start doing some really weird thing with their spine or some interesting things for their body. It's like, oh, okay, so that's where your weakness is compared to what you're wanting to work on. Okay, so then we know with how to then address your physical breakdown. And so then I'll take a person from that physical and I'll go into the quote-unquote neuro-mental emotional body. That's mostly all the body work that I do. So I do a lot of body work from massage techniques to acupuncture techniques to chiropractic techniques to stretching and strength enhancement performance techniques. There's energy balancing techniques. There's so many body work techniques that can be done to help address the neurological and mental emotional body. So by working on, for example, putting you on your side and working on the muscles, ligaments, and tendons and bones around the brainstem where your neck connects to your head, we literally will release the quote-unquote mechanical tension on the brainstem, taking all the inflammation away from that part of the body. Just like when you get a massage, you're just like, oh, it feels so good, or it hurts so good, or dig out that knot. Well, after that therapist is done with that area, and if they've done it right, it's anti-inflamed. It's now has more blood supply. It has less toxin in there, and that toxin now went to the blood and is about to be detoxed. So any body work that we do addresses that neurological and mental emotional, because we know that when the nerves are happy, the brain's happy. When the brain's happy, the gut's happy. When the gut's happy, the emotional and the mental systems are happy. So there's many, many aspects to when you work on the mental an emotional body. We know a lot of techniques. Sometimes if a person is in that system, is really dealing with fear, worry, and anxiety, we can find the quote-unquote transmission points in the neurology that help fire certain parts of the brain. So, for example, depression is where dopamine and serotonin are kind of out of balance. So I'll check from the bodywork standpoint where there are specific points on the body that deal with those two neurotransmitters. So we'll address those transmitters and then talk about the situation and do some breathing work, do some left brain, right brain cross-crawl work to help open up that brain center so you can see another possibility. So addressing it from that standpoint. Then the last standpoint that we do is looking at it from a biochemical standpoint. Now, I use kinesiology, and I have in the past done all the functional medicine tests. So sending you out for a blood test to get your C-reactive protein or your bilirubin or your whatever chemicals we're looking for in whatever panel to see the health of a thyroid and adrenal, cholesterol levels, all that kind of stuff. So then there's your hair analysis, your saliva analysis, even the SNP tests for your DNA, like the MTHFR gene, the GCMAF gene, and all these other amazing genes that we utilize to help our bodies be more vital. So what I've done is, over the years of functional medicine, I found about 10 or 12 profiles that most human beings function through. And then I have a test kit that has all the different environmental pollutants and allergens that are in our environment and all the different types of foods and neurotransmitters that you would be responding to in life. And so just like when you test biofeedback, if I shine a light in your eye is going to contract, and the other one is going to contract as well. And I can see what we call refractory time. And so it's a biofeedback of I shine a light in your eye and your eye does something. If your eye does one thing, I can say, oh, wow, you have adrenal fatigue. If it does another thing, I can say, wow, you have really good adrenals.
Right.
I mean, it's really simple. And that's biofeedback. Well, when your body comes in contact with a cell phone, you have an energetic reaction. When it comes in contact with a human being, you have an energetic connection. If that person that you come in contact with is someone of a friend, you're going to have a different biochemical reaction, a biofeedback. And if it's a foe, you're going to have another one. And it's just the nature of the beast. When you tell a truth, your body's going to show certain things within your heart, your breathing pattern, your temperature of your body, and that's how we can utilize lie detector tests and stuff like that. Also, when your body tells a truth, it's going to show certain things versus a lie. So I use the principles of biofeedback in what we call applied kinesiology, which is the testing and testing of the movements of energy that we interact with. And so I can test your muscles, or I can test my own muscle in relationship to your energy field. So there's different ways a person does kinesiology. And so we run the gamut of these neuroprofiles. Now here's the thing, and here comes to the health tip of the day, or the health tip of the week, is when we start addressing the biochemical, it's really interesting. So when I exercise you, obviously I'm going to give you more endorphins. Obviously we're going to get more oxygen to the blood, more change in your physiology, better autonomic responses of the body, more oxygen to the brain, more nutrition to the body, and everything. So we're obviously changing biochemistry. And when you exercise, 9 times out of 10, that biochemical response is going to be anti-inflammatory, immune boosting, autonomic nervous system balancing, heart rate variability stabilizing and bringing into coherence. All these amazing things happen when we exercise, and we know that. Then we also know that when you think certain thoughts about yourself, about your neighbor, about your environment, and those thoughts create biochemistry, and that changes physiology, changes your response. You get out in your car, and all of a sudden you're angry because someone just cut you off. Who just ate the poison? Well, you did, because the anger created neurochemistry that affected the body, and obviously 9 times out of 10, anger is inflammatory. Very inflammatory to the body, to the gut, to the heart, to the mind, to the brain, all those different types of things. So obviously saying, okay, well, yeah, work on your thoughts, and we do. Now, when it comes to, and so again, this gets back to the health tip of the week, is then when you get into biochemistry, almost 100% of the time, the biochemical thing that we're working on isn't the lack of physical action, isn't the lack of...
Hold that thought, Doctor. Hold that thought. We have a break. We'll be back. The call number is 800-313-9443.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman.com. Thank you. If you want to start with Dr. Myers, real simple. Here's all you need to do. Call his office, set up that first private, no-charge consultation. His office telephone number is area code 314-878-6868. Let's continue, Doctor.
Am I coming through okay? Sounded a little fuzzy. All right, sounds good. All right,
wrong signal.
All right, good. So we're going to be we're dealing with mental, emotional, neurological. We're dealing with physical. And when it comes to biochemical is where we really start getting into the health tip of the week. And it links the neural, mental, emotional, and the biochemical together. Because one of the biggest things we're dealing with is, quote unquote, and I'll unpack this after I say this, a psychological warfare. And to realize that you have control on how to handle this. And the thing is, all the knowledge that you need is already out there. And I'm actually going to tell you everything that I know to the point of that it's digestible for this particular subject. Here's the thing, of the biggest psychological warfare that has ever come out, and it's so obvious now that what they've done, it's If you're out of it, you really notice it. If you're in it, you don't notice it, except to the point of you don't know what to do about it. And how can it be possible that they would do such a thing? I don't know what goes on through each person's head, but this is the overall conversation and psychological issue that we're dealing with. If you walk into your every grocery store, I don't care if it's a Whole Foods, a Trader Joe's, a Fresh Time, a Deerbrook's, a Snooks, or any type of local grocery store chain that is in your area, you walk into that store and you're going to notice that there's an immense dairy section filled with milk, cheese, and butters and yogurts. Everything dairy. I mean, just dairy, 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 dairy. You're going to notice in every aisle there is a product with a barcode and an ingredient list on it. And almost, I would say, 97 to 98%, and I'm not kidding on these numbers, of all the packaged products in there, from a can, a box, a bag, whatever, that has an ingredient list on it. In that ingredient list is going to be a product like wheat, corn, and soy, and any of its biochemical extractions, like, for example, corn into citric acid, a preservative in your canned foods. Instead of brining it, they use a corn-derived product called citric acid. Well, so you find a lot of these products. Well, all of those products, the wheat, the corn, and the soy, and all their derivative preservatives, are loaded, literally loaded with Roundup. I mean, so much excitotoxin is in these foods. And on top of it, even if it wasn't Roundup, these chemicals are so excitotoxic to your body. And what I mean by excitotoxic, or a nerve chemical that literally puts fire to your nervous system, puts fire or into your immune system, where you have to use anti-inflammatory or inflammatory nature chemicals, all your histamines, all those types of things, to douse the flames. And it burns out all these different neurotransmitters. And obviously, we know that if you have a thought that can change your entire biofeedback nature and chemistry, if we can do something physical like exercise to create endorphins in your brain, or breathe and completely change your physiology to have no disease, it goes to say it works the opposite. If you put these neurochemicals into your body, which, here's the thing, is what I'm getting at, is if you walk into your grocery store, anything you buy immediately is pretty much going to be neurotoxic to the system. It's all in the dairy, it's all in the gluten, it's all in the wheat, it's all in the soy, it's all in the corn. So you walk in your grocery store, and the system has been set up that you almost think you have no choice. Because then a person like me comes around and says, hey, all these things are neurotoxic, they're bad for you, they're creating all your disease, they're creating your heart problem, they're creating your diabetes, they're creating your cancer, they're creating your infertility, they're creating your prostate problem, they're creating your erectile dysfunction, they're creating your neurological MS, or all these different types of things. It's all food poisoning. And here's the thing, you tell a group, a person, a society this, and we do one big, huge thing, is we end up taking away everything they thought they knew about food.
That's right. Here's our break. We'll be back after the break. Stay tuned, everybody.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We're continuing our Energy Cleaner promotion, which began August of 2016. In this promotion, you get to buy an energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and a mattress pad 10% off retail. $200 of the purchase price of the energy cleaner goes to Republic Broadcasting. This is a great way to help get energy cleaners out to people who need them and have some financial issues to deal with. And, of course, a great way to support Republic Broadcasting. Here's what you do. Send in a postcard. My address is John Moore, P.O. Box 201, Davidsville, Missouri. We pick a postcard every 2 weeks. If your postcard is drawn, you get the chance to buy the energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and 10% off the mattress pads. Put your name and your address, your telephone number, and your email address on the postcard, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday the 30th of March. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. You'll find interesting things there that will inform you and entertain you, such as the book, the book titled The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. Free download at my website under free downloads. A book that will help you gain the clarity, gain the focus you need to achieve any goal you need to achieve. It could be health-related, personal relationship, career-related, financial, whatever that goal might be, or goals. This book will help you achieve those goals. Also, my website, of course, Energy Cleaners. I'm having an Easter sale from now until midnight Monday evening. Energy Cleaners, $50 off. Mattress pads, 10% off. When you place your order, you'll be paying full price. I can't change my automated system just for a 3-day sale. So place your order, and I refund the difference for the sale price, $50 off energy cleaners, 10% off mattress pads. Keep in mind, I do take PayPal, the most secure way to make any payment online, as well as MasterCard and Visa. If you're sending a money order, make sure it's postmarked before midnight Monday to take advantage of the Easter sale. Visiting with Dr. Phil Myers. If you want to get started with Dr. Myers, he's my personal physician, by the way. He's also my coach when I'm involved in training for athletics. That number for Dr. Myers is 314-878-6868. Let's continue, Doctor.
So to recap for a second for people that are just checking in, we're talking about the psychological warfare and the basically your grocery store industry. Let's keep it simple. And so when a person like me comes around and says, "Hey, all your dairy is tainted, all your canned, boxed, bagged, and prepared foods are tainted," and it's pretty daunting, because then a person looks like, well, what? And so it shows you how far off the paradigm we really got, because when you look at it, you have this entire amazing section of the store called produce.
Right.
It's huge. It's full of vegetables and fruits in tons. Now, this isn't the radio show to get into the difference between conventional organic and soil quality. Let's just say, for example, that's the closest best choice you have right now to work with. And so things that you can do is so let's get back to the second. So what happens is you go into this grocery store and you start looking at, you walk down every aisle, you look at the things that you normally buy, and you look at the ingredients, and you see wheat, you see a corn-based product, you see a soy-based product, you see an oil, olive oil, coconut oil, sunflower oil in the ingredients, which makes it a trans fat preservative, rancid and no nutritional value, and completely inflammatory to your system. And you're like, oh my God, Doc, what the heck is going on? You've just taken away everything. I don't even know what to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You've taken away all my comfort food. I no longer have my pizza. I no longer have my chocolate. I no longer have my spaghetti or my macaroni and cheese, my toast with butter on it and jam, like my bacon and eggs. I mean, oh my God, seriously, what are you doing? And like I told one of my clients, hate the message, not the messenger. And the message is we are being poisoned with the food that you go and sometimes spend $40 to $60 on a date to go to a particular restaurant to go get. Because 9 times out of 10, they're cooking or preparing these foods with the dairy, the cheese, and the butter. They're preparing your foods with the hidden oils in the package and prepared bulk foods that they're getting. And even if it's a small amount, I'm sorry, I don't want a small amount of arsenic in my body either. Or how about this? How about it's the best sandwich in the entire world? It is awesome. I mean, it's the best Dagwood sandwich you can possibly ever imagine. And just think, just for example, in this analogy, pretend there's no tainted stuff in that food. So all the bread's good, all the lettuce, all the cheese, everything's wonderful. And then you put a piece of feces on it. Do you want that piece? Do you want that sandwich? I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want it. But if you didn't know it was there, and then you ate it, you wouldn't know any difference except for maybe a couple hours later, maybe a day later, you're like, wow, my stomach doesn't feel so good. I feel nauseous. I've had a headache. I have more gas than normal. My knee's a little achy or a little cricky. I woke up a lot more stiffer than I normally do. I wonder if you got under the radar food poisoning from that little bit of feces, that you didn't know about it. But then I come along with you before you ate it, and I said, oh, my God, dude, John, in this food here, and you're going to get sick with it. And you look at me like, but there's nothing else to eat. And I can't see this feces that you talk about. So it's blowing my paradigm too much, and I'm just going to go eat it anyways. And you can do that because we're a human being, and we have free will and free choice. But here's the thing. The psychological warfare has gotten to the point where your options are pretty much limited. Everything that you're promoted with on TV and commercials and radio isn't about how to eat, how to cook all these wonderful fruits and vegetables to have all the amazing comfort foods you want, all the amazing satisfactory things that you want, that nutritionalize your body so well, that feed your body so immensely well, that are completely, to a high degree, anti-inflammatory, help the body regenerate and replenish. Like, for example, let's take protein, for example. The protein is a huge conversation, especially within the fitness industry. And you look everywhere, there's your whey protein isolate. Made from what? Dairy, or chemically produced dairy in the lab. So you get this whey protein isolate, or even like your pea proteins, and they're kind of come up with these different proteins, which most of the time were bad. But let's stick with whey for a second. So you got this whey protein that only has basically one property to it, just protein. That's it. There's no real vitamin, mineral, enzymes, no electrolytes, no real anything in there. Whereas then, for example, you can go get watermelon seeds, sprout them, or go buy some sprouted ones, and you'll have more protein in that, more nutrition, more vitamin, mineral, enzymes ever than would ever be in a soy protein isolate, and actually get an anti-inflammatory response, a high neurochemical building response, better brain chemistry, better gut health, better digestion, blood sugar regulation, and human growth hormone potential boosting. How awesome! Protein isolate does none of that. It's actually inflammatory. It actually takes longer for your body to process because it's an isolate. It's a part food, not a whole food. So your body has to actually use its own energy to convert that into usable fuel. Well, that's not a viable source. It sounds like everything that is wrong with the body versus everything that's right with the body. But so when you feed the body the right thing, like, for example, the watermelon sprouted seeds, then your body gets tons. And you don't need a lot. Honestly, it's amazing. And then how much fruit do you eat in a day? Oh, I have maybe a banana here or a couple grapes here. Like, okay, why don't we try to have 3 cups of fruit a day? Different ones: apples, bananas, grapes, mangoes, papayas, pineapples. I mean, you name it. Just start picking a fruit a day and having one. Just that alone will start changing your physiology, start changing the way your body responds and reacts to foods. We talk about 3 things in when I help people convert all this psychological warfare into actual usable daily things to do with their food. As I say, okay, yeah, we obviously have to clean everything out. Be like that and do that, which I do. I'm like this type of person, is you clear everything out first. But then there's also replace. Well, what the heck are you going to replace it with? Most people think replace is, I go from my gluten bread to my gluten-free bread. Well, not necessarily. Sometimes replace is replacing bread with fruit or a vegetable or some other type of meal versus just replacing something that looks like the same but doesn't belong. And then there's replenish. And this is where people get really stuck, because they've taken everything away. They tried to replace it with something that looks similar, and then replenish. Well, replenish what? Most of almost all your quote-unquote gluten-free products that are trying to be the imitators have almost no nutritional value in them at all. There's barely any vitamin, mineral, and enzymes in them. They're just using different flours and different cakers and impactors to make this stuff work for everybody. It really doesn't have that high of a nutritional value. Whereas if you actually went into more of the fruits and vegetables, you would literally get more. And here's the thing, you can't just do it from supplements. Trust me on this. I have Intermax, which is from Drunker Labs. This stuff is killer. This stuff is amazing in terms of a full spectrum of vitamin, mineral, enzyme, everything your body can possibly ever want. But you can't live off of that. It's there to supplement certain aspects of nutritional absorption, because when your body's inflamed, when it's working through these neurotoxins that are all your food that you're eating every single day, your body doesn't absorb much food, much fuel. So you have to sometimes utilize high products like Intermax from Drunker Labs that puts that nutrient back into the system. So when you talk about fruits and vegetables, I have my multivitamin. Okay, I don't think that doesn't work. And we know it doesn't work. I mean, empirically, in every way, shape, or form, especially, oh my God, I mean, let's just talk about going into your nutrition store, whether it be Walgreens or Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or Walmart. The quality of 98% of all the stuff out there is crud. It's not live, it's not whole, and it's not complete at all. And 9 times out of 10, most of them, especially from the really more pharmaceutically driven stores, are filled with wheat, soy, and corn-derived preservatives. And you get into your Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, and Fresh Time type of supplements, and you're going to get way better quality, but at the same time, they do not replace your fruits and vegetables. And they surely don't completely replenish all that's missing. So we really need to change the way we have always and forever thought about food. But like I said, this is part of the whole psychological warfare. It goes in the face of every holiday, every celebration, every commercialized event out there on TV, radio, and in your supermarkets. It goes against the whole thing. And so here you are, where everybody's wearing a black shirt and you're wearing a white shirt, or vice versa. You're completely standing out. You're completely going against the grain. And everybody's looking at you like you're crazy. Well, you're not. You're just informed. And we are all going to have to make the shift. It's an inevitable shift. And I made it. I mean, I had to do it for my own reasons. And over time, there was times, periods like either I was ignorant of the fact or I stayed oblivious, and I chose not to do something. So like, okay, I can handle it. The pizza this time. Oh, it's just that this time. Oh, I'll have that extra sandwich, even though I know I don't want it. Oh, I'll sacrifice. I know that this product has butter in it. I know it's full of sugar and gluten and cheese, but you know what? It smells so good. I'm over at this person's house. They put so much effort into it. I'll just have it anyways. And then the next couple of days, I feel like ass. And so do you. But we do it anyways for those particular emotional, mental reasons. But again, it's all psychological warfare. It's all right in front of you. And the belief that you don't have a choice, that you're stuck, locked, and trapped, a matrix of information, you have a choice. You have the ability. So, like, for example, I made that choice. And honestly, there's not many pictures of me on the line or anything like that, but and you guys hear me on the radio, but I've lost over 30 pounds over the past 6 months. And just by eliminating all the toxins, I eat more calories and more food and more nutrition you can possibly shake your feather at. And I work out constantly and have greatly muscle mass response. But now I'm not puffy. I feel so much better in my life. I'm seeing my shoulders and my knees healing from injuries when I was 15, 17, 20, early 20s. So almost 20 years ago, almost 30, sometimes 25 years ago. And I'm seeing them healing now. Well, that goes against the face of the whole, well, as you get older, you don't regenerate as fast. Well, okay, BS. That happens because of all the amounts of toxins.
Right.
Start eliminating the toxins, and guess what? Your body actually does regenerate. It no longer becomes an esoteric New Age verbiage. It actually becomes a reality in your life. And like I said, that's why when I work on people, I focus on the physical, the neurobiochemical, the neuro, mental, emotional, and the biochemical. And when you address all three of those categories, you address it very, very well. And I know there's a lot of toxins out there. I know there's a lot of food that it takes a while to get out. So then I have our ionic split baths that I put people in with infrared sauna.
Here's our break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. 30th of March. Visiting with Dr. Phil Myers. You want to get started with Dr. Myers? It's simple. It doesn't cost anything. Call his office, set up that first private, no-charge consultation. You could be any place. Florida, California, Texas, doesn't matter. That number is 314-878-6868. Let's continue, Doctor.
So actually that last commercial was awesome. I mean, she's right on. And so I highly recommend, and I haven't even heard her or listened to her, but I'm going to go listen to that because she's speaking something about the truth about what's really going on. I mean, so you have all these different industries. You got the food industry, the agriculture industry, the AMA industry, the governmental agency industries, the petroleum-based. I mean, think about it. Your coal, all your fuel, petroleum-based products are now in your agriculture. That's what they're utilizing to fertilize your soil. And then they're taking that soil and then putting genetically modified crops that are resistant to the Roundup, which is the chemical that glyphosate that when you put into your body, basically makes your gut Swiss cheese. And let's be honest here, what's it really doing? Leaky gut? Yeah, no one knows what that is. Swiss cheese, everybody knows what Swiss cheese is.
Right.
And that food that you eat leaks right into the outer system of the body where it doesn't belong. And then your body goes completely haywire with inflammation. And so then and here's the thing that's crazy, before they harvest the wheat, the corn, and the soy, they literally spray all of right before, like hours before they harvest, they spray the entire crop with Roundup. And then they harvest it, then they ground it up, and then they package it, and then they sell it to you. You just didn't see them spray the Roundup on the food that you had in your hand right the moment that you put it in your mouth. They just did it weeks or months ahead of time.
Right. Right. It's a dramatic increase in the harvest, and that's why they do it. It's what's called off-label usage.
It's horrible.
Off-label usage. Right.
Yeah, it's horrible. And yeah, they don't even tell you.
No.
And so there's just so much going on. So, for example, then when you're doing your fruits and vegetables, get fruit and veggie wash. It's not just for the bugs and the dirt, but it's to get rid of as much residue of the agricultural shipping, manufacturing process as possible before you put it in your mouth. And you'll notice a difference. I mean, really notice a difference. Just in terms of not only how the food tastes, but how you feel. But then if you really want to get scientific on it, get a microscope and look at the water molecules after you've washed the fruit. Crazy.
There you go. Doctor, thank you. Maybe back next Friday. Appreciate it.
You too. Bye.
That's it for the day. That's it for the week. Get your medical supplies, energy cleaning, your essential oils now while you can, your firearms and ammunition. Never, ever give up your guns. Please go have a fun, safe, productive day and weekend. And God bless. Oh, and happy Easter, by the way. And God bless America.